Welcome back, D-Gens, to a second episode of Market Watch, the show where I try to pretend to know what I'm talking about. So, it's been a rather tumultuous week, hasn't it been? I think the last time I left everyone off, we were like right over here, around $11,500. And at the time, it looked relatively bearish from a professional perspective, and it looked really bullish from the crowd, in terms of the crowd's opinion. And what ended up happening was something I wasn't expecting and no one was really expecting at all. It was this monster pump all the way up to what is this, $13,200 nearly? No, it did pass 13 too. So that was really, really impressive. I don't think anyone was expecting it because the chart looked like this at the time. And most people were saying that this was bearish, lower high, so on and so forth. And we ended up doing this, which was really, really impressive to see and really good to see because generally, what people are always afraid of with Bitcoin, and I saw this last year as well, or rather 2 years ago when we had the last bull run, is people get very, very, very scared right away, very quickly, and they will duck tail and run as soon as they see the first sign of trouble. So this happened last year whenever there was news of the China ban. We were trading at somewhere around, I believe it was $5,000. The China ban information came out. It was pretty bad news, and Bitcoin dumped like crazy. Nearly 50% of its value went all the way down to $3,000. And I remember everyone was saying, even the professional traders were saying, oh, Bitcoin is done, it's over, so on and so forth. But you just have to hold in those cases. I mean, if you're not a trader, this is the advice that I always give to people. I don't trade too much myself. And there's a reason for that, is that it's very hard to be correct more often than not, as well as you're a human, right? You have to trade like a machine in order to win in these markets. You have to trade without any kind of emotion. And so you have to kind of do things that are not necessarily in your wheelhouse as an individual. So unless you're a psychopath, go ahead and trade. So we had this great pump up. And then out of nowhere, no one was expecting it, we had this massive, massive spike downwards, which was crazy. Like, it was actually much faster than the rise up. And I even personally, like I said, I went into this with a very small position, and I'm glad I did, and I'm glad it was small, because I went in around here, and then we went up, and it was great, and then we had this huge spike down. Thankfully, I got stopped out, and it was a small position, but still, it's crazy. These markets are absolutely crazy, and these markets will catch you. I believe Loomdart made a post recently, and his post was something along the lines of, if you use high leverage on a large amount of your account, there will eventually come the time when the trade goes against you, and you will wish that you had never traded that much, that you had never actually gone and slid the leverage slider up that high. And that's for a very good reason, because what's going to happen is you're going to lose so much of your money, you're going to absolutely regret it. And so that is what happened with a lot of people. I know a lot of traders who went in long on this. Again, I went long, but I went, thankfully, with a small position. But a lot of traders went long, and they got wrecked. Super, super wrecked. I mean, you have to look at this. If you're going from a leverage perspective, so the highs here were $13,000. The lows here, which happened just hours later, $11,000. That's nearly a 20% move. Anyone above 5x leverage got liquidated. So, yeah, it's really hard. So 5x leverage, personally, I use 3x leverage, and even 3x sometimes makes me a little bit scared. But 3x generally, you'll do fine if you're following the trend. 5x leverage, in this case, if you bought at 13,000, you got wrecked. So, and then we have this cute little bounce up, which I'll get to now. First, I did want to say this, that I'm kind of seeing these Doritos people are posting. People call them triangles. I call them Doritos. I don't really know if they're believable or not, if they actually work. But, if we have any kind of Dorito action here, it's certainly possible we could do something like this for a while. And then we'll decide whether we're going to go up to $50,000 in one candle, or we're just going to die. Can certainly go either way. So maybe look at this triangle, this Dorito, sorry. We're going to patent that, by the way. They're going to be called Doritos. The Roy Blackstone Doritos. They're actually not any different from triangles, but there you have it. So we didn't have too much news in Bitcoin this week, but we did have an interesting tweet that just came out. If you're looking at my tabs, you know what I'm talking about. We had Donald J. Trump on Twitter just this morning make a nice post about Bitcoin, and I think this is the first time Trump has really ever mentioned Bitcoin. So now I'm going to read this aloud to you. He says, I am not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies which are not money and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activity, like the US dollar. Similarly, Facebook Libra's virtual currency will have little standing or dependability. If Facebook and other companies want to become a bank, they must seek a new banking charter and become subject to all banking regulations, just like other banks, both national and international. We have only one real currency in the USA, and it is stronger than ever, both dependable and reliable. It is by far the most dominant currency anywhere in the world, and it will always stay that way. It is called the the United States dollar. Okay, so this isn't really a tweet storm, this is 3 tweets, but you can probably add this to the annals of old white people hating on Bitcoin, because a lot of old white people, for whatever reason, they just really don't like Bitcoin. Actually, we can kind of theorize why. They don't really understand it, they don't really get it, it's new technology, so on and so forth. So Donald J. Trump, he's an old white guy, and old white guys don't like Bitcoin, so natural kind of reaction there. And I do think this is the first time he's ever mentioned Bitcoin. So, but funnily enough, we actually, when this news came out, when Donald Trump tweeted this, we had Bitcoin's response, which was crazy. It went from 11,000 all the way to what the highs were, 11,700, and it looks like it's still ongoing. This cute little pump here. So it's really, it just goes to show you that Bitcoin doesn't care. Bitcoin really doesn't care. There have been many times in the past where news has come out, ETF denied. Other times when China has banned Bitcoin, because they ban Bitcoin every 3 to 6 months. Actually, if I check my my calendar now, it should be about time for China to ban Bitcoin again. So that might be a good pump catalyst, because Bitcoin doesn't care. Whenever this bad news usually comes out, people always say, well, it's good for Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin starts going up. So Donald Trump doesn't like Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin starts going up, funnily enough. Just a cute little piece of information there for you. If you're new to the markets, keep that in mind. Bad news isn't always necessarily bad for Bitcoin. Sometimes it really does just go up on its own. The phrase is the honey badger doesn't care. Bitcoin doesn't care. It has no such cares about whether you like it or anyone else. It is going to do its own thing on its own schedule, on its own calendar. So that is always good to hear. So going back to this, I did want to talk about this just a little bit, because this is kind of the only news we have this week. I think obviously it's fallacious to say that Bitcoin is backed by nothing while the United States dollar is backed by things. I think I'm more of the opinion that, because this is a lot of theory and a lot of guesswork, I think in general the United States dollar does have backing, obviously. So they have backing of men with guns, the military. They have backing of the debt, because, well, there's the promise or the hope that the United States may someday be able to pay off the $22 or $23 trillion of debt. Obviously, they're never going to do that. Come on, let's be real here. Let's be pragmatic. It's never going to happen. But certainly it is, for now, it's a backing that works. And also the faith of the American people and people around the world who accept the US dollar is certainly something that backs it. It's backed by faith in many cases. Bitcoin, on the other hand, it's not backed by nothing. It's backed by, I believe, so look up the Tangled in Taipei. This was a meeting between, this was a debate between Arthur Hayes and Nouriel Roubini, and they kind of hashed it out, they talked it out, and they had a debate on whether Bitcoin was a valuable form of money or store of value, so on and so forth. And Arthur Hayes said it best, Bitcoin, and I'm paraphrasing here, the US dollar is obviously backed by people with guns. The Bitcoin is backed instead by electricity and mathematics. And so there is certainly a backing there. As well, I would say the network effects of Bitcoin is something that's interesting. The fact that there is no central authority. These are things that don't necessarily back it, but these are things that are benefits of using Bitcoin that are very, very and almost impossible to replicate in some cases. And so the deflationary aspects, so on and so forth. So I would say certainly Donald Trump, it's not like he knows what Bitcoin is. He doesn't know what the white paper is. I think if you told him Satoshi Nakamoto, he would probably think it was some, dish at P.F. Chang's or something. But certainly to say that Bitcoin has no value is obviously fallacious. And of course, people agree with that. So just a cute little story there from Trump. There's not much else in the way of news this week. We have this right here. I wanted to talk a little bit about alts. particularly BNB specifically. There was a great AMA that came out today with CZ where he answered community questions, and he basically said, so BNB right now, I believe their market cap is somewhere around $4 billion, maybe a little bit higher than that. And CZ came on this AMA this morning, just a few hours ago, and he said that even though there are 40% of BNB is currently locked, as you may or may not know, for the team allocation, which means when BNB was originally raised, when they raised funds for it, they sold a certain amount of tokens. I think it was 30 or 40% of their tokens to the public, and they kept 40% for the team themselves. And what CZ said is, this morning he said it just now, we are going to burn 40% of the BNB supply, all of our team allocation, all of our tokens. We're going to get rid of them to create almost a quasi no pre-mine coin, because at that point there will have been no incentive for the team aside from BNB that they bought on the market, which is a very interesting move. And I think one of my friends said this is unprecedented, which I agree completely. I don't think this has ever been done before, burning such a large amount of coins on one of the largest cryptocurrencies. And I think the math goes to something like $2.6 billion of BNB that are going to be burned. So if you don't know what burning is, they're taking these tokens and they're sending them to an address that they don't have the keys to, and those tokens will never be accessed. So effectively takes them out of the supply. I think it's extremely bullish for BNB, to be honest, and I think we have seen that reaction today. We've had this kind of dip down here, and now we've had a pretty decent rise. I'm curious to know how many people actually saw this news, and on top of that, I'm curious to know how many people actually understood this news, because personally, I would expect a much bigger reaction than the one that we've had from BNB. Certainly, I think in the future, we will see a much bigger reaction to this news. Obviously, Binance is the leading exchange right now in the world with cryptocurrencies and altcurrencies, and if Binance and we know that Binance, what they love to do is they love to execute, right? So I would guess that this burn is probably coming in the next 30 days. And once this burn comes, it is going to be, just again, $2.6 billion of BNB now taken out of circulation, now taken out of the markets, unable to be sold, which is going to constrict the amount of supply left and going to make that sell side that much thinner for people looking to get positions in BNB. So I applaud it as a move. I think it's really interesting. I think morally speaking, it's awesome. You know, they say business and morals don't mix. Well, here's a great example where they do mix. CZ, whether you like him or hate him, is doing, you know, you can't say that he's just this greedy guy at the end of the day, because he really is. He's burning $2.6 billion worth of BNB. And it's not just him, it's the entire team that decided this. So consider it from your end. Would you be willing to burn $2.6 billion of your money? Or if you own 10% of it, let's say, like CZ probably owns 10% of that, would you burn $250 million in order to support an ecosystem and a network? I think it says a lot. It sets a standard for the industry. And I think other exchanges that follow Binance, like KuCoin, Huobi, etc., are really going to look at this move and really consider what they are doing with their own exchanges and how they can take their exchange to the next level. So again, applause, I think, is deserved for CZ. It's a great decision. I'm curious to see how it'll work out, and I think it means great things for BNB holders. So I think that was all of the news that we had this week. Just this little Donald Trump tweet as well as the BNB burn. I don't think we had anything else that happened. It's kind of a slow week, but that's okay. We'll have slow weeks sometimes. Bitcoin, again, is pretty undecided. It could go down, it could go up, guys. Where is it going to go? Who knows? Don't be a degen, though. Stay below 3x leverage if you plan on trading these markets, because, man, they can whipsaw faster than you can believe. So I think that is it. Let me know if you guys have any comments. Like the video, please. Subscribe. And I will be back next week with some more stuff. See you guys.